You've probably seen videos or ads for testosterone boosters or specific testosterone boosting supplements, and they'll have a bunch of these random ingredients, ashwagandha, fenugreek, whatever. The main reason these testosterone boosters actually work is because of zinc, and there's so many reasons for this because zinc is such a potent testosterone booster. It lowers inflammation, it raises gene expression, it inhibits cortisol, it helps vitamin D bind to the vitamin D receptor. It lowers SHBG levels and aromatase activity. It helps the conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone. It helps in the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone and luteinizing hormone, and so on down the HBG axis. But basically, it impacts pretty much every major factor in producing testosterone and making sure that testosterone stays free to bind to the androgen receptors that lowers inflammation and oxidative stress. And one thing you do have to kind of be careful about, and this does actually raise free testosterone, but it will again lower SHBG, and also it lowers 5-alpha reductase activity. So both of these things are definitely essential with low SHBG levels if you have like too much zinc or something. And again, this is probably not something you're going to have to deal with, just making sure you're eating enough fiber to make sure your SHBG levels are healthy, not too much, because again, that's going to raise it too high. And there's other ways you can do this as well, like eating boron, that's going to lower your SHBG levels. I'm not going to say lower, I'm going to say regulate, but just making sure that your testosterone stays free and unbound so it can bind to the androgen receptors, so it can actually be used by your body in different tissues. But also with inhibiting 5-alpha reductase activity, this can be a problem if you're wanting to raise your DHT levels. Again, most men probably should be trying to raise their DHT levels because it's about 5 times as potent as testosterone. It has slightly different uses, but it's actually better for gaining muscle mass, for libido, all of that. Specifically for muscle mass, you're getting it in smaller concentrations in your actual muscle tissue, which is why most people focus more on testosterone specifically for muscle. But DHT is more potent for that purpose. And again, if you're balding or you have cancer symptom, or you're at risk of developing cancer, I should say, lowering your DHT levels isn't going to be a bad thing if you have those specific goals in mind. I would personally take balding over having low DHT levels, and that's what I would recommend as well. But there are some health factors associated with having many high DHT levels, or just regular DHT levels, and there's reasons why you want that to be lower. But I don't think that having high zinc is going to actually lower your DHT levels, because it is raising your free testosterone. So there is more free testosterone that is going to be able to be bound to the 5-alpha reductase to create DHT. If you're worried about having too much zinc is going to be lowering your DHT levels, it's probably going to keep it about the same. So that can go for the other way. If you're trying to lower DHT levels, zinc isn't going to be a great way to do that. But there are ways to make sure that your 5-alpha reductase is still high. You can eat sorghum. That's probably one of the best foods to eat if you're trying to increase your DHT levels. So now, specifically about eating enough zinc and also making sure that you absorb that zinc, because a lot of people will eat enough zinc. They'll eat like a ton of beef. They'll eat, like, you can eat 5 pounds of beef. That's more than enough zinc. You're probably going to get over 30 milligrams of zinc in 5, way more than that. But because of the zinc to copper ratio, and this is so important when talking about zinc absorption, but because if your zinc to copper ratio is messed up, you can eat as much zinc as you want, you're not going to absorb it. And also making sure the zinc that you get is in the correct form. So that's why supplements are the best way to get your zinc, because there's different forms of zinc, and these different forms have different absorption levels. Generally, from most nutrients, getting your nutrients from animal-based foods instead of plant foods will lead to higher absorption by your body, like vitamin A or omega-3s. You're generally going to have better absorption getting from animal sources. But specifically the zinc levels in beef, and I would assume this is how most people are getting their zinc, at least mainly from. You get trace amounts from other foods, and that's a good thing. So this, I just want to explain here. even if you're getting most of your zinc from beef, you're probably going to be zinc deficient if you're not getting enough copper, because beef has a zinc to copper ratio about 70 to 1. That's not the exact number, but it's something high like that, when the ideal ratio of zinc to copper for absorption is going to be around 8 to 1. So even if you're getting 30-40 milligrams of zinc, you might only be absorbing like 8 milligrams of that. If you're getting most of your zinc from beef and you're also not eating other high copper foods, and a good way to balance this out, you can just eat like oyster, beef liver, and those are high zinc and high copper foods, so it's going to help that ratio out. You also don't want your copper to be too high, because that's also going to mess up your absorption and just other functions as well. You can also eat high copper foods like potato or cashews or chocolate. There's a bunch more. Just do research into that just to make sure you're getting enough copper, and it's hard to get more copper than the ratio, especially if you're eating high zinc foods like beef. But if you're getting most of your zinc from oyster, it has a higher zinc to copper ratio than the recommended. It's about 16 to 1, somewhere in there. And again, this isn't going to be the best for absorption, because you're probably going to get more zinc than your body's actually going to be absorbing, especially if you're not eating other high copper foods. But if you're getting your zinc from oyster, you're going to be getting like 50 milligrams in a serving, even if you absorb half of that, because of the 16-to-1 ratio. That's double the ratio that's going to be recommended. You're still going to be absorbing 25 milligrams of that, and 25 milligrams of zinc in a day is a great number to be striving for. I'd say between like 25-30, around there is probably the ideal. The RDA is 11 milligrams, that's way too low. But other high zinc foods are going to have higher zinc to copper ratios as well, like turkey. It's a high zinc to copper ratio. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking like 30 to 1, but you can do your own research into that. Pumpkin seeds, like 15 to 1. Oatmeal, it's 15 to 1 as well. These aren't exact numbers, just off the top of my head, but generally you're gonna need to eat more high copper foods to make sure your body's actually absorbing the zinc that you eat. And that's the main thing that people are going to ignore. They'll focus on eating a ton of beef or these high zinc foods, and they'll eat like 20-30 milligrams, but they're not getting enough copper, so they're only absorbing maybe half of that, if I'm being generous. Because if a lot of people, if they're trying to get high zinc in their diet, the main food source that they'll gravitate towards is beef. And if you're eating beef as your main source of zinc without eating other high copper foods to compensate for the low zinc to copper ratio in beef, or I should say high zinc to copper ratio like 71, you're going to end up with low levels of zinc absorption. And there's also ties to zinc absorption with other nutrients like iron. So having high iron levels is also going to lower your zinc absorption. And a lot of the foods that are high in iron are high in zinc as well, like beef's high in iron, pumpkin seeds, I should say oatmeal is high in iron, a lot of turkey's high in iron. So you're going to have these high zinc foods that are also high in iron, and that's going to build up your iron stores and lower your zinc absorption as well. So just make sure you're eating enough zinc, that's the most, and making sure that you have the right ratios of zinc to other nutrients to make sure your body's actually absorbing these nutrients, absorbing zinc to actually get the benefits from it.